Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a late night insight video on an iconic Serge Lutens perfume called Iris Silver Mist. And this decant was given to me by, I believe, Rachel. I'm sorry if it was somebody else, but too many decants and not a good enough system keeping track of everything. But whoever sent this to me, my perfume god person, thank you very much. I really have enjoyed getting to know this, and you can see I put a pretty good dent wearing this occasionally on and off. I bet you I've given this 4 or 5 spritzes before bed over the last year, maybe even 2 now. I don't know how long I've had this, but it's been a while. And I've really gotten to know Iris Silver Mist, I think, about as well as I can without owning a full bottle and just continuously wearing it. So I'm ready to give my sort of late night insight quick hit video. These are great because I don't feel any pressure to give an outstanding sort of in-depth detailed review. I can just give my thoughts and move on. So before I do, I just want to mention something about Iris Silver Mist, in that this is clearly one of like the holy grail irises for many people, and it's true. There is a aspect of this to be one of the greatest irises of all time, but there is a debate in the perfume community whether this is an Iris Soliflor or whether this is like an entire composition that just happens to have an amazing iris note. And I happen to fall into the, I do not think this is an Iris Soliflor. I think this is a sort of composition with just an amazing iris note, and I'm going to give my reasons why. But first I want to read you something from Perfumes, the A to Z guide, and just a fantastic book if you love perfume. It's an amazing read. The perfumes are broken down into little bite-sized snippets, and so this is what our good friend Luca Turin and Tina Sanchez say about Iris Silver Mist. This is actually a really interesting story. So they gave Iris Silver Mist 5 stars, and they called it Iris Root, $3 attached to it. It now sells in the 75 ml bell jars for $305, by the way. And it says, long before everybody started doing irises, and mostly pseudo-irises, Lutens had commissioned an iris to end them all from Maurice Roussel. The story goes that Lutens pestered the perfumer to turn up the iris volume to the max, and Roussel, in desperation, decided to put in the formula every material on his database that had the iris descriptor attached to it, including the seldom used brutal iris nitrile called Irivol. The result was the powderiest, rootiest, most sinister iris imaginable, a huge gray ostrich feather boa to wear with purple velvet at a poet's funeral. Okay, so that's what they have to say about Iris Silver Mist. Now, Iris Silver Mist is an interesting fragrance because before I do that, I do have to mention a couple things. So I have smelled actual iris in its sort of unperfumed form, right? And that would be this Oris 80% Irones, which in perfumery, many perfumers sort of celebrate the fact that they're using Irones in the 12 or 15% range. 80% Irones is like unheard of, right? So this is thanks to my good friend Russian Adam, and this is one of the most amazing materials I've smelled ever in my entire journey. It's almost indescribable. You know, there's a little bit of like a carroty feel, that carrot seed type feel, but it's powdery, and the best descriptor I ever saw from anybody about smelling a material like this is that it smells like smelling the top of a brand new baby's head. And actually there are studies that say smelling a baby's head, a mother, you know, smelling a baby's head, because the baby is usually feeding on the woman's breast, and so the head is right there, and so just the mother smelling the baby's head, there is a calming facet to that. And it's like ingrained in us. It's hardwired in us, right? And there's something to this that is just so indescribable almost. And the closest fragrance from any of the just main perfume houses that I've ever smelled that capture that Iris Soliflor note, if you will, is probably Hiris. I would call this an Iris Soliflor, a proper Iris Soliflor. And you can see the woman in the blue and yellow dress representing Hiris. And so this is an Iris Soliflor. Serge Lutens Iris Silver Mist is not to me because it does so many other things. So just to start, it opens up, I do agree with many folks that it opens up smelling very chilly and almost icy cold on the skin. It's almost like when you spray your hand, you're spraying your hand with ice. I mean, it literally feels like that. And it's interesting that they choose to use, if you look at the note breakdown in Parfumo, you'll notice that they choose to use the word white amber as one of the notes in this composition. So obviously there's iris root, there's musk, which Maurice Roussel is very famous for. There is white amber, and a couple other ingredients, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But the term sort of white amber is a very interesting use because I never hear it used in other compositions. I've heard of like black amber and stuff like that, but white amber is a little bit of a rarity. Apparently, white amber is used in other fragrances. I'm just not familiar with very many of them, if any of them at all. Some of the white amber, some of the fragrances that use this white amber note, I'm just not very familiar with, just happenstance. Like, for example, Alien Man by Mugler, I've never smelled that one. Musk Noble by Guerlain uses it, never smelled it. Rose of No Man's Land by Byredo, never smelled it. There's so many of these, you know, never smelled it that just happen to use this white amber. So maybe I'm just sort of assigning a smell to it. But to me, there is something that has this white ambery feel when you spray Iris Silver Mist, and it almost feels like you're smelling frostbite, if that makes sense. Like if you have ever like left something in the freezer and for too long and you pull it out and the bag has this frostbite all over it, right? Because it was in the freezer for too long, or maybe the freezer got too warm and then it refroze and it gives it that sort of sorry, I don't know what's going on with my camera. It keeps moving on me, but apologies. Okay, we'll try to get that straight. So without that bar being straight at the top, it absolutely drives me crazy. Okay, so just imagine this sheath of frostbite around this bag. And you know, sometimes when you touch it and the bag feels extra cold because the surface area is covered with that frost. So when you put your hand in it, it's like putting your hand in fresh snow, right? It gets cold much faster. If your hand's wet and then you touch it, it's even worse, right? So, and they stick to your hand and all that stuff, right? But it just feels like that. There is definitely this cool, icy, frosty-like feel. And along with that feeling, obviously you notice the rooty, earthy, chalky iris right away. However you want to describe it, it's here. The iris, because like I said in the beginning, Serge Lutens basically had him use every iris material imaginable to put in Iris Silver Mist. And so however you can imagine an iris note smelling, there are bits and pieces of that in Iris Silver Mist. That's one of the reasons I think this is such a Hall of Fame iris fragrance to so many people. And along with that, to my nose, comes this creamy white floral. Now, I like to smell these before I kind of look at the note breakdown. So one of the things that I made sure that I put an asterisk next to is the fact that this creamy white floral smell in the opening is there every single time I've worn it. And I was fully expecting to see like a jasmine note or something in here. And that's one of the things that shocked me when I first saw the note listing. No jasmine, no white floral note listed at all in the note breakdown. It smells to me like jasmine, where this creamy white floral sort of teams up with the musk and the white amber, the musk and white amber and jasmine, and they make the fragrance sort of smell like Iris Silver Frost instead of Iris Silver Mist. If you want like an explanation of my thinking while I wear the fragrance. And so I've also heard that there's many folks who wear this that get a metallic vibe. Heard that over and over and over again, this sort of metallic feel. And I'll tell you what, I definitely get the powders. I definitely get that ghost white floral note that's not listed in here. There's another ghost note, which I get later on, that is not listed. But at this point in the fragrance, early on, I don't, and actually throughout the whole breakdown of the fragrance, I don't get any sort of metallic-like smell. Not in the traditional metallic way. Not like in the metallic way that you would get from something like Sartorial, for example, from Penhaligon's or something like that. You know, the iron hitting the clothing, or the machine that sort of dry cleans, that presses, right? and that steam. I don't get that sort of metallic feel from this at all. The only thing metallic that sort of hops into my mind when I smell Iris Silver Mist is I can see this kind of worn by a woman that has a heart of steel, a cold heart like steel, but I can't actually get a metallic smell. It just doesn't, it doesn't compute in my brain, this metallic smell while I'm smelling Iris Silver Mist. And so for me, the iris note starts to kind of turn rooty and earthy, and with that, slightly green. So sometimes, like I said, there's little bits of the iris note. Any sort of take on the iris that you can think of, it's here. Is it powdery? Yes. Is it but it's not, the one thing I will say is it's not lipsticky. This is before that lipsticky iris note really became popular with Dior Homme and stuff like that. So if you're looking for the lipstick iris, you will be disappointed. Outside of that lipsticky iris, there's powders, like I described a powdery iris the other day as like powders from the way women would powder their nose. You definitely get some of that. You definitely get the earthiness. You definitely will at times get the chalkiness. You'll get a little bit of a waxy iris note from time to time, and definitely the rootiness. So the rootiness of the iris here is probably most prominent because I feel like the green galbanum note, which at times can be sort of bitter and sharp and off-putting, works with the greenness from the orris root, from the iris, to amplify that green, earthy, rooty bit, right? And like I said, the chalkiness sort of hides under the mist, it feels like. So sometimes the mist may come down a bit and you get some of that chalkiness, and sometimes the mist may rise up and it covers the chalkiness up. But different bits and pieces of the iris, the floral side of the iris is another bit that you'll get here as well. And maybe that's the jasmine smell that I'm smelling, the white floral smell. Maybe that's the floral side of this iris note, even though it's not listed. Excuse me. Even though it's not listed, definitely you'll get the floral side of it as well. And then finally, once you get to maybe like the hour mark, maybe an hour and a half, that's really where the spices start to increase on my skin every single time. It just depends on body chemistry and stuff like that. But hour to hour and a half is pretty common, where you really start to get this increase in spices. And those spices, that's where the clove starts to come in from my guess, because that's really the only spice listed that can give off that type of smell. There may be other spices in here listed or used that are not listed, but that's really where the spices start to emerge. And this is also the point that I get the second ghost note. And that second ghost note is leather. And maybe it's like a suede leather, whatever you want to call it, but I definitely get this feeling of leather. You know, staying with the mist analogy, it's almost like, imagine you're sort of walking across an old leather bridge, right? And you're walking straight through that haze, straight through that haziness. And as the hours tick by, what ends up coming forward is this very musky, white-smelling cabbage. So I'll tell you, there is a dish in Arabic culture called malfouf. And malfouf is like this cabbage, and they put like rice and meat inside and roll it up, and it's like long, right? Whereas if you've ever seen those grape leaves that they roll up, they're very small. The malfouf is long because cabbage leaves are very big, right? But I'm pretty familiar with the smell of cabbage. My mother used to buy them all the time when I was a kid. And this definitely gives me this white, and you know, sometimes the cabbage, depending on how deep into the cabbage the leaf is, the outer leaves are more green. Their inner leaves are usually whiter, right? And so there's this sort of musky, I don't want to say milky cabbage, but there is this creamy cabbage, let's say. And elements of iris or musk start to emerge as stronger and thicker. So what I mean by that is the chill. It's almost like the chill in the beginning was like the cold front coming through, right? You know how a cold front comes in front of a storm? And now the real mist is part of the storm, and it's like really enveloping you in this sort of slightly pillow, soft, embrace. Even though it's very cold. but it's a cold embrace. It's an embrace that feels heartless or soulless. You know, it doesn't feel like the embrace is really loving. It feels like it could go from, you know, it's like the story I told the other day with Antaeus, where Hercules actually killed Antaeus, the giant from Greek mythology, in an embrace because he had to pick him up off the ground. It feels like the embrace is going to go from actually being a hug to being a bear hug. Because there is that cold, that's the metallic side of it. That's the steel side of it. You know, I could totally see this on just somebody who is in a point in their life where maybe they had hard times and they just never recovered and they're just heartless. You know what I mean? This feels like it would be a perfect fragrance for a heartless, cold-blooded woman in her 50s or 60s that, you know, is maybe like the Devil Wears Prada type woman, right? That kind of feel, right? She runs her own company, Ruthless. She's her own Hacksaw Jim Douglas, right? She doesn't hire someone to fire people. She fires them herself because she's such a complete badass. And, you know, that's the kind of woman that's the steel side of this, the metallic side of this. It feels like there is a coldness of the heart. Not like a metallic coldness, though, if that makes sense. And what's interesting is that musk note. I can't get away from it because it does seem to amplify itself as the hours go on. And of course, if you know Maurice Roussel's other works, what came later, of course, no one knew in 1994, but he became famous for things like Musc Ravageur, and there's many, many musk fragrances that Maurice Roussel put out. There's a pretty big musk note in Dante Bras, and also a lot of Casmaran. New Harlem has a musk note. A lot of his work has this sort of musk note in there. Of course, Uncut Gem, which came out last year in 2022, there's a big musk note in the base. And so musk is kind of a thing that I would almost associate with our friend Maurice Roussel. And here it becomes more prominent than you would expect, to my nose, for a fragrance called Iris Silver Mist. Obviously, the iris is the star of the show because of all the different iris materials used. But you know what's interesting is the muskiness underneath and the woodiness underneath, because there is this woody character from the cedar wood and the sandalwood. Now, the scent that or the note that I never get in this fragrance is the frankincense. I never get this traditional frankincense like smokiness, right? At all. Even though it's listed as a note, it's almost like the mist just completely flattens it. You know, it just completely puts a lid on it. And it can't seep out of whatever that lid is. You know, there's no little hole for the steam to get out or for the mist to get out. When they put the cap on the pan, there's no way for the frankincense smoke to escape somehow. I don't know. It's I've constantly looked for it, and I constantly am just left saying I have no clue. You know, whether maybe it's part of the wood accord and it just smells more like a generic type cedar or sandalwood to me. But I don't get that, but I do get a little bit of the vetiver. I think the vetiver adds to the earthiness and the rootiness and the green aspects. But the frankincense is a complete mystery to me. But, you know, what's interesting is this entire composition that Maurice Roussel built. Like, the way I imagine this fragrance going is that this fragrance was like a fragrance that Maurice Roussel built before knowing that Serge Lutens wanted more and more and more and more iris. So I just imagine an entire composition built first. And then iris kept being added on top, on top, on top. So for me, this is, it's almost like the iris is the mist settling over that original composition that Maurice Roussel built. There's a whole fragrance underneath, the whole composition. It's not just an iris soliflor to me. And, you know, Maurice Roussel, I really like his personality. If you've ever, like, you know, he's like a traditional Frenchman to me. Smokes a lot, curses, drinks, all that stuff, right? And I could totally see him in the lab just throwing shit around, you know, this asshole wants me to add more and more and more Iris. I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to put everything in there and fuck him. You know what I mean? It feels like that kind of guy. And he gives it to him, and Serge Lutens goes, that's it. That's exactly what I was looking for. And he's like, I'm going to smoke a cigarette. Forget this. And leaves. And so, but it ended up being a cult classic, a hit, an instant modern classic, if you will. Now, as an Iris lover, and I am an Iris lover, you know, my problem is, for me, I probably would get just as much satisfaction out of Hiris, for me personally. And when you have a big collection, sometimes you have to kind of make decisions when fragrances play in the same sandbox, you know what I mean? Would I love to have a bottle of Iris Silver Mist? Yes. Is it worth $300 for me right now? No. I don't think it would be. You know, I would probably just spray my little decant and cherish what I have left whenever I get the itch. But I don't know if I would go spend $300. But for some people, you know, this fragrance is like the Hall of Fame Iris. It's a must-have. For me, you know, I don't know. There's so many other Iris-heavy compositions out there that would scratch the itch, I think. But this is an all-time classic. I'm so glad I got a chance to talk about it on the channel. And Rachel, if you did indeed send me this, which I think you did, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your patience, as this review has been a long, long time coming. And even this, I don't think is a true review because, you know, you can only spend so much time with a little sample like this. But these are kind of my thoughts. If you have experience with Iris Silver Mist, do let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Love the back and forth for you guys. Sorry about the Myrrh video cutting out 15 minutes early today. So the last, you know, whatever it was, 20 fragrances that the last 15 minutes cut out, I just put in the description down there. So sorry the video just cut out. Like I was mid-sentence and it just stopped. But we got through most of it. We got through probably 90% of the video. Good enough. So anyways, appreciate everyone's support. Cheers, guys. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.